In the 1500s, Spain discovered the richest silver mines in human history. Ships arrived monthly from the Americas loaded with treasure. Spain became the wealthiest nation on earth. They had more gold and silver than anyone had ever seen. And you know who got rich from it? The Dutch and the French and the Italians. Everyone except Spain. Spain imported $3 trillion worth of precious metals over 150 years and ended up bankrupt 7 times. Meanwhile, the Netherlands went from being Spain's colony to becoming the richest trading nation in the world, using Spanish gold. And here's what's terrifying. America's doing the exact same thing right now. Stay with me, because once you see this pattern, you'll understand why empires collapse. Let me explain how this works. It's the 1500s. Spain's conquistadors have conquered the Aztec and Inca empires. They've discovered the silver mines at Potosí in what's now Bolivia, and these mines are unbelievable. At peak production, they're supplying 60% of all the silver in the entire world. One mountain. 60% of global output. Spanish galleons start making regular trips across the Atlantic, gold and silver flowing into Seville every month. The Spanish crown is collecting 20% of all treasure as the royal fifth. Spain's got more money than any European nation in history. So what do they do with all this wealth? They stop producing things. Think about it. If you've got unlimited gold coming in every month, why would you work in a factory? Why would you farm? You can just buy whatever you need from other countries. Spanish manufacturing collapses. Their agriculture declines. Spanish workers abandon productive industries because imports are cheaper than making things domestically. Why compete with French grain or Dutch manufactured goods when you can just buy them with American silver? And here's where it gets interesting. All that gold and silver flowing into Spain, it doesn't stay there. It flows right back out to pay for imports, to fund wars, to buy the things Spain stopped making. Dutch merchants show up in Spanish ports selling textiles, tools, manufactured goods. They accept Spanish silver as payment. Then they sail home with that silver and use it to build factories, fund trading voyages, develop new industries. Spain's gold is literally financing the Dutch economy. France does the same thing. They sell grain, wine, luxury goods to Spain. Spanish silver flows to French farmers and merchants. France uses that money to develop their economy, build infrastructure, strengthen their position. Italy, too. Banking families in Genoa and Florence loan money to the Spanish crown at high interest rates. Spain borrows to fund wars and government spending. Italian bankers get rich off the interest payments. Spanish silver, Italian profits. So you've got this insane situation. Spain sitting on the richest treasure source in history, and they're using it to make their competitors wealthy. The Dutch Republic, which used to be a Spanish colony, becomes a global trading power, using Spanish silver to fund their rise. Let me show you specific numbers. Between 1500 and 1650, Spain imported about 180 tons of gold and 16,000 tons of silver. That's over $3 trillion in today's money. In the same period, Spain declared bankruptcy 7 times. 1557, 1575, 1586, 1607, 1627, 1647, 1662. 7 times in a century. How do you have $3 trillion in treasure and go bankrupt 7 times? Because Spain stopped being productive. They became a conduit. Silver came in one port, went out another port to pay for foreign goods. Spain was just the middleman. They didn't create value. They didn't build industries. They just distributed wealth to countries that actually produced things. Meanwhile, look at the Netherlands. They don't have gold mines. They don't have silver. What do they have? Ships, factories, merchants who know how to trade. They produce things people want. Textiles, tools, ships themselves. And they use Spanish silver earned through trade to expand their productive capacity. By the 1600s, Amsterdam is the financial center of Europe. Not Seville, not Madrid, Amsterdam. Dutch banks are financing trade across the world. The Dutch East India Company becomes the most valuable company in history, and a huge chunk of their capital came from Spanish silver earned through selling goods to Spain. This is the key insight. Wealth isn't about having gold. Wealth is about productive capacity. It's about making things people want. Spain had the gold, but they didn't make anything. So the gold flowed to the countries that did. And here's where this gets really important. Because America's doing the exact same thing right now. Let me show you the parallels. In 1950, America produced 50% of the world's manufactured goods. 50%. We made everything. Cars, steel, electronics, machinery, you name it. American factories were the most productive in the world. That was real wealth, real productive capacity. Then something changed. Starting in the 1970s and accelerating through the 1990s, American companies moved production overseas. Why? Labor was cheaper, profits were higher, shareholders wanted maximum returns. So factories moved to Mexico, then to China, then to Vietnam, Bangladesh, everywhere labor was cheap. And Americans were told this was fine. We become a service economy. We do the high-value work and let other countries handle manufacturing. Sound familiar? That's exactly what Spain did. They stopped producing and started importing. They thought having gold was enough. It wasn't. Now look at what's happening. America doesn't make most of what it consumes anymore. Your phone, made in China. Your clothes, Bangladesh or Vietnam. Your TV, Korea or China. Even stuff designed in America is manufactured overseas. And how does America pay for all these imports? We print dollars. We run massive trade deficits. In 2023, America imported $1.2 trillion more than it exported. $1.2 trillion. That's the trade deficit. We're buying foreign goods with dollars we create. But here's the thing. Just like Spanish silver, those dollars don't disappear. They go to China, to Germany, to Japan, to countries that actually produce things. And what do those countries do with the dollars? They use them to build more factories, to invest in infrastructure, to develop technology, to increase their productive capacity. China's using American dollars to build the Belt and Road Initiative, massive infrastructure projects across Asia and Africa. They're using our money to expand their economic influence. Germany's using trade surplus dollars to maintain the most advanced manufacturing sector in Europe. Precision engineering, automotive technology, industrial machinery. We're doing what Spain did. We're sending our money to competitors and watching them use it to get stronger while we get weaker. Spain had gold mines. America has the printing press. Spain could create money from silver. America can create money from nothing because the dollar is the reserve currency. But in both cases, if you're not producing real goods, the money just flows to countries that are. And just like Spain, America's going into debt, massive debt. $36 trillion national debt and climbing. We're borrowing to maintain consumption we can't afford through production. Spain did the same thing. They borrowed from Italian and German bankers to cover spending that exceeded their actual productive capacity. Here's what happened to Spain. Eventually, the silver wasn't enough. The debt became unsustainable. Lenders stopped trusting Spanish promises to pay. The economy collapsed. And by 1700, Spain went from being the dominant European power to being irrelevant. A second-rate nation that nobody feared. The countries that got rich were the ones that used Spanish silver to build productive economies. The Dutch created a trading empire. The French built industries. The Italians developed banking. They turned Spain's gold into productive assets that generated wealth for centuries. Now let me show you what's happening to America. China's not just taking our dollars and sitting on them. They're using them strategically. They're building factories that make them less dependent on imports. They're developing technology that competes with American companies. They're creating infrastructure that positions them as the center of Asian trade. In 1990, China's GDP was $360 billion. Today, it's over $17 trillion. That's a 47x increase. And a huge chunk of that growth was financed by American trade deficit dollars. We sent the money, they built an economy that's now challenging ours. Look at manufacturing. In 2000, China produced 6% of global manufactured goods. Today, over 30%. They're the workshop of the world, and we're increasingly dependent on them for products we use to make ourselves. During COVID, we couldn't produce enough masks, or medical equipment, or pharmaceuticals. We had to import from China. That's embarrassing for a country that used to manufacture everything. But it's the reality of what happens when you outsource production for decades. And here's the scary part. Just like Spain needed Dutch and French merchants, we need Chinese manufacturers. We can't just flip a switch and start making everything domestically again. The factories are gone. The expertise is gone. The supply chains are built around Asian production. Spain became dependent on countries they were financing. We've become dependent on countries we're financing with our trade deficit. It's the same trap. Now, I'm not saying China is going to collapse America the way the Dutch and French didn't exactly conquer Spain. It's more subtle than that. Spain didn't fall to foreign invasion. They just became irrelevant. They couldn't afford their military anymore. They couldn't project power. They became a second-tier nation that had to accept whatever terms stronger powers dictated. That's what's at risk for America. Not invasion, but loss of economic independence, loss of productive capacity, becoming dependent on other countries for essential goods, having to accept terms we don't like because we need their manufacturing more than they need our dollars. And dollars are only valuable as long as people accept them. Spain's silver had intrinsic value. Dollars are backed by nothing except trust and military power. If countries start doubting dollar stability, if they create alternative systems, the whole structure collapses. China's building alternative payment systems. The BRICS nations are discussing a new reserve currency. Countries are settling trade in yuan, in euros, in anything but dollars. They watched what happened to Spain. They saw that having lots of money means nothing if you're not producing real value. Here's what keeps me up at night. Spain's decline took about 150 years from peak to irrelevance. They peaked around 1580. By 1700, they were done. In today's fast-moving world, how long would America's decline take? Not 150 years, maybe 30, maybe less. And most people won't see it happening. Just like most Spaniards in 1600 still thought they were the dominant power. They had the gold, after all. How could they not be powerful? But the real power had already shifted to the countries using Spanish gold to build productive economies. Americans think we're still the dominant economy. We have the reserve currency, after all. We have the biggest military. How could we not be powerful? But the productive capacity is shifting. The factories are in Asia. The infrastructure investment is in China. The trade relationships are being built without us. If you're realizing that America is making Spain's exact mistake, financing competitors while losing productive capacity, then subscribe. Hit that like button. Because we're showing you the economic patterns that repeat throughout history, the ones that determine which countries rise and which fall. And here's what I want to know. Drop a comment. Can America reverse this? Can we rebuild manufacturing, restore productive capacity, become less dependent on imports? Or are we too far down Spain's path? Is it even possible to bring back industries we've lost? Tell me what you think, because this isn't just economic analysis. This is about whether America stays a superpower or becomes the next Spain, a country that had everything, squandered it, and ended up dependent on nations they used to dominate. Spain's gold paid for Dutch success. America's dollars are paying for China's rise. The pattern's the same. The question is whether we're paying attention this time.